At this time, regarding count 15, the jury has found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, guilty of the offense of aggravated murder, signed by all 12, dated the 25th day of November 2020. Count 16, the jury has found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, not guilty of the offense of aggravated murder, signed by all 12, dated the 25th day of November 2020. Count 17, the jurors have found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, guilty of the offense of murder, signed by all 12, dated the 25th day of November 2020. Count 18, the jury has found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, not guilty of the offense of murder. Count 19, the jury has found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, not guilty of the offense of kidnapping. Count 20, the jury has found the defendant, Erica Stefanko, not guilty of the offense of aggravated robbery, signed by all 12 and dated the 25th day of November 2020.
There was the judge reading the verdicts. Erica Stefanko set to spend possibly the rest of her life behind bars. She'll be sentenced in January. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Shanley Painter, who is surprisingly still awake, still standing after such a long day, long week. Shanley, I want to start with the jury. I know they have the face masks on, but this was a jury that put in a lot of work. And they had issues with coming to a verdict, and it really seemed to a lot of us, oh, this is going to be a hung jury. They can't figure it out. They did come to a verdict. Was there anything that you picked up in terms of body language, any emotion? I mean, a lot of times we cover a trial, some jurors are crying during the reading of a verdict. Anything that you could tell from this jury as the judge read the verdict?
Well, I could tell first thing when they walked into the jury room after all of us inside were waiting on pins and needles for their arrival so we could learn the fate of Erica Stefanko. They filed in. Now, this courtroom, because it is set up for COVID-19, Ted, the jurors enter from two different doors. One from the door for the jury box and one from the door we all enter into, the gallery, so that those can be spread out in the gallery. Now, when they entered, I'm always looking to see if they are going to look towards the defendant, because to me that's an indication possibly of whether or not it's guilty or not guilty. None of the jurors made eye contact, even looked over in the direction of Erica Stefanko when they walked into the courtroom, and they were quite quiet and no reaction whatsoever when the verdict was read, because they already knew the verdict. But I did get to see who the foreperson was, Ted. He stood to agree that yes, they were able to reach a verdict on all 6 counts, and then the judge read it, and the only reaction from inside the courtroom was from Erica Stefanko. Held her head up and then held her head down the rest of the time when she heard the first guilty for aggravated murder.
A lot of times jurors will speak afterwards to the media. Were they given an option in this case, and did anybody take the time to speak with Court TV or anybody else?
You know, the judge usually will sometimes tell the jury at the end of their service that they are free to speak to whoever they want to speak to. The judge did not do that in this case before the jury was dismissed, and they did have escorts out of the building to make sure they all made it to wherever they were going safely without being bothered. I did, however, learn that they did take time to speak to the detective in this case, possibly a couple of the attorneys before they left, but not to any media.
All right, we're going to talk to you live with Brian LaPrenzi in just a bit. One of the prosecutors will ask him. I know that he was able to speak with the jurors. Maybe he'll give us some insight on where they were. Let's go through the it's a little bit confusing. Let's go through the charges in this case and the guilty verdicts. You've got aggravated murder guilty, then aggravated murder felony not guilty. You've got a guilty on one of the murders and a not guilty with the other murder. Just to briefly explain the not guilty. So when we get the guilty ones, why did the jury say no, not guilty, because of the felony aspect of this charge?
Yeah, that's a good point and a good difference between the charges here, because that can be a little bit confusing. Now, the jury instructions outlined this explicitly for them. They had a hard copy of those instructions back with them while they deliberated to refer to, because there is a difference. The first count of aggravated murder was for the purposeful premeditated plan to cause the death of Ashley Biggs. So the guilty there means that the jury agreed that this was a plot, that Chad Cobb and Erica Stefanko planned this out ahead of time and executed that plan against Ashley Biggs. Now, the second aggravated murder is the felony murder theory. So in the commission of committing a felony, the underlying felonies here, kidnapping and aggravated robbery, they purposefully caused the death of Ashley Biggs. They didn't agree with that. And same with the murder purposefully causing the death, and then the felony murder, which is, while committing a felony, the proximate result of that is the death. No, they didn't agree with that, Ted. So that means this jury was very clear and spoke very with volume that they believed Erica Stefanko was part of this plan. She and Cobb, ahead of time, decided that they were going to end the life of Ashley Biggs in that brutal way that the prosecutors outlined for this jury.
Yeah, it wasn't just that somebody died during a robbery or during a kidnapping. It was that somebody died because there was a plan to kill her. And that's what this jury, at the end of the day, believed. I know you had a chance to talk to Prosecutor Felicia Easter afterwards. Let's take a listen to that, and then we'll talk about it.
This is the third day of deliberations, over 14 hours. I'm a former prosecutor. Were you in any way nervous waiting for the deliberations to conclude?
No, with the magnitude and gravity of this case and with the amount of evidence we had, and that includes the 3-hour, 1-minute recorded conversation with Erica Stefanko, no, I'm just glad and thankful that the jury took their job seriously and weighed all the evidence before coming back with a verdict.
Yeah, even after this morning when they entered the courtroom saying they had difficulty coming to a consensus for a verdict, and you were still feeling confident at that point?
We were. We did not, of course, know what the difficulty was. But we were always confident with the strength of our evidence in the case against Erica Stefanko.
Sentencing coming up in January for Erica Stefanko. What will your office be asking for at that time?
Well, she did play a major role in this and the planning. So we will be asking for the sentencings that you can get with the top count aggravated murder is life. With parole eligibility, I believe, after 20, 25, 30 years, and life without. And at that time, we will be asking for it, life without.
And I know Chainley, they then later wanted to clarify that that's what they're thinking now, but they first want to speak with family members.
Exactly. They wanted to make clear that before they make a recommendation to the judge, they always consult the victim's family in the case to make sure they're all on the same page, to take in what they believe is justice in this case into consideration to their recommendation. And Ted, I've been in contact with the friends and family of Ashley Biggs for over a week and a half, and I have no doubt that they're going to recommend life without the possibility of parole, just like Chad Cobb pled to and was sentenced to now 7 years ago.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it'll be up to the judge in this case. And frankly, this wasn't an open and shut case. I mean, it's evident by the time it took the jury to deliberate. It's evident by the time the fact that they were having trouble coming to a conclusion that, again, the ultimate decision maker here is the judge. A judge, by the way, who was fantastic during this process. Really enjoyed watching her take control of the courtroom. Detective Hitchings, also. You had a chance to talk to him. He was the lead detective. Let's listen.
It's what I wanted to see, and it's pretty much for the family. I think it helps them get a little more closure and bring some peace to this situation. Honestly, after the 2 days out, I started getting nervous a little bit myself. There's no way around it. You're going to get nervous the longer it goes. Just trying to figure out what they're thinking back there in the room, and what they're trying to put together and how they're putting the evidence together.
I like Hitchings. He's honest. Prosecutor Easter, I don't believe her that she wasn't a little bit nervous during that time, but yeah, she's a force. Hitchings was a really interesting witness here and part of this case. Small town detective. I mean, in his 20-plus career, he only has investigated five murders, he said. But boy, you could really tell his involvement and his compassion, or his passion in this case, looking for justice.
Oh, you really could. And the thing about Detective Hitching, as the lead investigator, he's sitting there right next to the prosecutors the entire trial at counsel table to advise and to offer whatever they may need during this process. And it's a statement to the jury when you have the lead detective sitting there with the prosecutors the entire trial, and then the very last witness in their case in chief is that man or woman, the lead detective on the case. So for him, his purpose in this trial was to really go back and fill in a lot of those holes and pieces of evidence in the overall process to wrap up that case, and that's what he did. And when I was talking to him today, you could really see in his face and his eyes that, I mean, this was 8.5 years of his career trying to bring full justice to the family of Ashley Biggs through a conviction for Erica Stefanko, someone he's tried to bring charges against since the beginning. And finally, he told me that really the tipping point in his investigation was the recording that was finally turned over by Chad Cobb's mother, Cindy Cobb, that 3-hour conversation between her and Erica Stefanko back in 2014.
You mentioned the friends. You talked to Maria Williams. Let's listen.
I am hoping for the maximum life without the possibility of parole. She had just as much a hand in Ashley's death as Chad did. She deserves the same as him. I feel like if she was truly innocent, not just that she felt innocent, that she was truly innocent, there would have been a bigger reaction from her. She just put her head down and just kept staring at the pictures. And it's like, if you are truly innocent, where's your reaction? You know, she had more of a reaction to her defense attorney's closing arguments than she did to being found guilty of aggravated murder.
So, Chanley, what's next? I assume she's right where she has been over the last year in a cell there in Summit County and will be sentenced when, and what are we expecting?
She has a sentencing hearing January 11th, 2 p.m. Eastern. Now, this hearing, both the defense and the prosecutor will submit arguments and recommendations for the sentence here. The range for aggravated murder is life in prison. Now, there is the possibility of parole after serving the minimum of 20 years here in Ohio, but the maximum, of course, is without parole. And the family, the victim's family, like Mariah there, and the mother, Kimberly Biggs of Ashley Biggs, they can present victim impact statements at the sentencing hearing in January. And Felicia Easter said that they can do that in person. So I'm sure they will all take the opportunity to, again, speak for Ashley Biggs and what they hope the judge will sentence Erica Stefanko to.
All right, Chanley Painter, thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. The whole Court TV crew really outdid themselves over this past week and a half. Thank you for all your hard work. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. We're going to